Hello and welcome to Leadership Ripples with Leah Fink. Every action you take as a leader has a ripple effect, impacting not only your team and the organization, but even going out into people's personal lives. On this show, we use real stories and examples from leaders just like yourself so we can learn and grow and develop our leadership. So ultimately, we create the kind of ripples that we want to with the people that we're trying to support. Please feel free to comment and ask your questions throughout the show. Of course, if you're watching us live, even if you're watching us and we're no longer live, if you put those questions and comments in the bar there, I can make sure to get back to you. Maybe you have some different ideas about what questions to ask new staff. I would love to hear them. Now, if you've been enjoying the show, I would really appreciate if you haven't, in the link or in the description, there is a link for the podcast app. If you are willing to leave a rating or review, it really helps this show get out there more, and I would greatly appreciate that. Now, today we are going to be talking about how to build trust with new team members when you have a new staff. AA writes in with their question. I'm a fairly new leader and will soon be getting a staff member on my team. When I transitioned to this role, I went from a colleague to a supervisor of the people on my team. I'd been in the role for a number of years and already knew them all pretty well. So when I became a supervisor, I felt like I had a good sense of how to support them. Now I have this new person and I don't know how to get to know someone when I am the supervisor. Do I have to do anything differently? What kinds of questions can I ask to get to know them and establish trust? Now, this is a great question, AA. And what I really love is that you're considering this relationship aspect right from the very beginning of connecting with this person. Often, when we're in these roles, we can get so caught up right away about making sure that the new staff know the policies and procedures and all the details of their role and all the rules that sometimes we kind of shuffle this idea of, oh, well, I'll get to know this person as we work together. And I actually do believe very strongly that if you can do a little bit of this work at the front end, really prioritize getting to know this person, what they care about, how they learn, how they engage, it actually saves you a ton of time down the road as you're trying to work with them because now you know the best way to do that. And AA, as you seem to already understand the importance of that connection, I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet. I'm going to dive right into these questions. Now, when you asked this, I really loved it too, because I do have a connection guide that I tend to use and share with my clients that helps them have this conversation. And if anyone wants that, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll send it to you happily. You can go to allthrive.ca and find the contact information on there to do that. And the first thing that I like to ask, and you'll see in the contact guide, connection guide, if you get it, is we can be pretty direct and ask people what they care about and what do they value in relationships. And when we ask that, we're talking about what their personal values are, what their needs are in relationship, what do they hope for in those interactions. And you can ask this pretty generally. You can also ask it specifically, what do they like in a relationship with a leader? And if they're having a hard time thinking of answers, because we don't always use needs-based, values-based hope language in our interactions, you can also ask them to just start thinking of specific relationships that are really healthy. And what do they like about those relationships? What really fulfills them in those relationships? And that kind of leads into the next two questions I would ask. And those are, what actions build trust in a relationship? And what actions damage trust in relationship? And again, this is then getting them more to think of those examples, right? Especially again with leaders in particular, what previous interactions have they had with leaders that have been super healthy? Which ones have not been? And those actions that supported that. And then you can use that again to build on the first question. And the reason I think it's so important to really, even if it's the later part of what you do, get to that first question is because we can get really caught up sometimes in this piece about actions. People get really caught up in this specific thing that someone did that they liked or didn't. And we all have, of course, these preferred ways of getting our needs met. We have preferred ways of how we like to interact or specific strategies, but they might not always be applicable or even possible in different situations. And of course, this person's coming into a new job. There's going to be different situations. There's going to be unknowns and things that they haven't experienced yet. And so now you're getting this sense of what people care about and these actions that they like. And sometimes when staff hear this, they start having this conversation. They go, wow, this person's so great. They really care about, me as a person. They want to get to know that. That's wonderful. And they might take on a bit of an assumption that, well, I told them I wanted this action, so now they're going to do it. And the challenge is, if we focus just on this level of action, we can actually be damaging trust because they have an anticipation of an action we might not be able to fulfill. For example, maybe you get this new staff member, you have this conversation, and they say, the biggest action that builds trust for me with a leader is that they do a daily check-in with me. Well, maybe that's possible, and maybe it isn't in that role. And if we get stuck on this piece of action, we only answer that question, we lose out on what's behind that. So, what is the important piece of them for this daily check-in? Maybe it's connected in their mind to that is what support looks like, and it conveys actual care to them, right? Or maybe it's that they like to be really structured and organized, and that helps them structure their day. There could be a whole range of meaning behind this. And if we can understand that value or that need or that hope behind it, now we can create different strategies. So now we can have this conversation with them and say, okay, sounds like this daily check-in is really important to you. Can you explain more about that? Okay, we get some details. Maybe we get the sense that it is more about support and care. Okay, I'm really hearing that this daily check-in is how you've best felt supported in the past. I have to let you know that in our environment, we might not be able to do a daily check-in, but I want to make sure you feel that support because that's really important. What are some other ways we can get that? So now we've gone from a staff member who, first of all, might not have even said anything about wanting this daily check-in. Now they've said something, and suddenly they were going to have this expectation now that we potentially would have had to break because that wouldn't have happened. Now to, we understand what they really care about, what they really need and value here. And now we can address that piece. And there's so many different strategies we can use to do that we've now involved them in the process of figuring out these strategies with us. And I'm going to expand this. We've talked about it a little bit before on the show, but just this deep listening is also so useful when you're trying to figure out what's important to people in all conversations. It's really finding the meaning and the value behind people's words, because you'll discover more and more when you do this, not just as you're building a relationship, but with the team you already have as you continue to grow with them. Let's say a staff tells you, wow, that last meeting was the best we ever had. We were much stricter to our schedule, and that meant everyone got to talk. So it was way better than usual. Okay, so let's consider some things that might be happening for that person, right? Even if you haven't had this discussion, here's some deep listening pieces you could pick up. Some of their values might have been around organization, because I talked about that strictly scheduled meeting, or maybe about equality, because I mentioned everyone got a chance to speak. Maybe they were feeling a lack of acknowledgement and want more acknowledgement of being heard when they say something in a meeting. Maybe they were hoping for some change and everyone being able to address that, right? That they are starting to get that hope met. And you, of course, want to double check these assumptions and have that conversation with your staff. Oh, you're saying that last meeting was the best one. What did you really like about that structure? Okay, what did you really like about everyone feeling heard? Once again, we have this conversation to clarify this. But if we don't have these conversations and we just hear that one piece of feedback, we might start thinking, oh, well, now I better keep every staff meeting very structured, or now this person's going to be upset. Or as you plan unstructured staff meetings, you're just waiting for that kind of reaction from them. So now you have a new view of this person, a view of what will help them feel supported, and some ideas about how you could do that. And I would recommend asking questions then about what's meaningful to them. I really believe that part of trust building in a professional role is helping find meaning or fulfillment of some kind in their work. And a question that I really like for this is, what does success look like to you? And this can be both within the role and on a more personal level, because it might align with their role, or there might be something that you can do to connect something more personal, even if the tasks of the role don't have this piece. Because realistically, let's say you're working with teenagers serving fast food. There might not be a lot of, connection or long-term aspirations in terms of the role itself. But of course, there's still things they care about and aspire to. There might be ways that they want to grow or certain interactions they want to have. So the physical action of flipping a burger a bunch of times might not be their favorite, but how could you incorporate some piece of what is really important to them? Maybe it's about how they help people and they like that piece of customer service that might serve them in a future career. Maybe they care more about systems and they'd be happy if you could give them some of those organizational pieces. Maybe they care about fun and they're the person that you go to keep morale up. Acknowledging how they see that success, what is meaningful to them in that way, and taking even small steps to support those pieces can have such a huge impact on your team and how you help them going forward. Another question I think is really great for leaders with their team right at the beginning, as they perceive a role, as they're starting this new role, is asking, what do you think the priority of this role is or is going to be? And again, this not only gives a sense of what's important, but very quickly gives them a chance and you a chance to check for alignment with what you're going to ask of them. So you're flipping burgers, you have this one employee that says the most important thing is getting a burger out as fast as possible, right? That's the very most important thing. Another says the customer experience is the very most important thing. Now, of course, neither of these are wrong or bad in any way, but it would definitely impact how you see this person is going to work in that role, what kind of framework you're going to give them for expectations, and then how you're going to give them feedback. Because now you really want to make sure that you're acknowledging this piece of, I understand that this is really priority to you. What does this other side look like? So once again, a great question for stimulating some of that stimulating some of that discussion. And this leads us to a final two questions, which I think are really critical. And that is, how do you like to receive feedback? And how do you like to give feedback? Now, how do you like to receive feedback? Of course, you're a leader, you're going to need to provide feedback, both positive and constructive. And so you want to make sure that you have a sense of what this person might prefer in that system. And I would really recommend, if you haven't listened to them, go back to some of our previous episodes about feedback so you really have a good sense of the framework you can use to build that kind of feedback into your day-to-day work. And then the second piece of this question, how do you like to give feedback? Is funny because it might be much harder for people to answer, but it's really important to start planting the seed if you want this person to be able to hold each other accountable on a team, be part of a group accountability, and also to be able to get your own feedback from this person about you, how you interact, how you can support them, and your relationship. So it's really good to help them start thinking about this now and open the doors to this idea of they also have the ability to influence their role and their place in this workplace. Now, of course, there are many more questions you can ask. Feel free to reach out and share your favorite questions to ask new staff or the staff that you have to build that kind of connection. I will recommend that if you're having this first conversation, you're just starting a relationship, give this some time. Give it a good hour that you can actually sit and learn more about this person and understand what they really care about. I can almost guarantee that the time you put in ahead here to do this relationship development will pay off tenfold in the time and happiness and lack of conflict and all these pieces that come in terms of your future interactions. It's very worth it. And finally, you're putting your effort into this relationship with this new person, but you're not the only person on the team. And I'm going to suggest that one of the things I love and why I made a connection guide is so people can write these things down. Once you have this conversation, you've done the thinking, you've done the reflection, and so you don't need to dig into it with every employee. It's hard to maybe in your workplace give each set of employees an hour with this new person so they can really create that connection. But if you've already had them write down some of their values and what they care about and what builds and breaks trust, and your already present employees have done the same thing, they can have a 10-minute conversation and they can share what's come up for both of them, what's important for both of them. And that stops misunderstandings from happening before they even start. It can limit some pieces of conflict. It can abate hurt feelings that are going to come up because of misunderstandings. So giving, again, that opportunity for these new people to just dive right into a very meaningful conversation that they've already done the reflection on, and just giving that little bit of a sense of connection right from the beginning. Now, AA, I hope that this gave you some good ideas, some good questions to start off with, and I look forward to continuing our conversation. As a reminder, if you share your story with us, I would love to follow up with you to make sure that your question is answered and give you a complimentary session to say thank you so much for sharing with us. This show is available on podcast form on Friday mornings if you prefer to listen that way, and the link for that is in the description below. Finally, I want to say thank you for prioritizing relationship, prioritizing your teams, and making sure that you are supporting them in the best way possible. It's a fantastic and important thing to do as a leader. And as we close, remember to ask yourself, what ripples are you going to create this week?